While I was 6 months pregnant, busy preparing our nursery, my sister-in-law was coaching another woman on how to seduce my husband. She brought this friend into our home, and her plan was simple: get my husband alone, stage an affair, and destroy our family before our baby was even born. They both called me a fat pregnant shrew and thought I was just a paranoid hormonal wife. They had no idea I was about to use their own conspiracy to send them straight to prison. I often look at the hideous, slightly melted crocheted potholder my sister-in-law sent me from prison, and I remember exactly what it cost to get her there. It cost us our dream, our safety, and nearly the tiny, fragile life we fought so hard to bring into this world. 6 months before that pathetic little square of yarn arrived, Marcus and I were living a real-life magazine spread. The ranch house was everything we'd saved for sprawling rooms, terracotta tiles, and the centerpiece. The indoor pool, glowing azure even on a gray day, a throwback to the decadence of the 1970 seconds. We were set. Marcus had just landed the WFH promotion that solidified everything, trading his commute for the 15 steps down the hall to the private office. I was 6 months pregnant, finally showing the glorious roundness I had yearned for, busy preparing the nursery for our son, Leo. We were, for the first time in our married life, perfectly, blissfully untouchable. The only shadow in our sunlit life was Bethany. Marcus's older sister wasn't just family, she was a gravitational pull of drama and neediness. Since her latest disastrous divorce, she had latched onto Marcus, convinced that because she had been the responsible one when they were children, a myth Marcus still bought into, he owed her constant emotional access. She had never quite forgiven me for marrying him, believing I had hijacked her primary source of validation, our happiness, our financial stability, and especially my pregnant belly, the ultimate symbol of our future together, were, in her eyes, a calculated insult. She resented me not just for having Marcus, but for having the calm, predictable life she perpetually ruined for herself. Marcus, burdened by a lifetime of guilt, was her perfect mark. He couldn't set boundaries with her. If he tried, Bethany would deploy her favorite weapon: the wounded sigh, the implication that he was abandoning her just like their father did. It was exhausting emotional terrorism, and it worked every time. The WFH promotion was the catalyst. Our new home office, tucked away discreetly behind the laundry room, was supposed to be his professional sanctuary. But to Bethany, it was an open invitation. She didn't visit us. She annexed us. Her daily visits started innocuously, under the guise of dropping off lunch or needing to talk through taxes. Marcus tried to push back. "Bethany, I'm literally on a video conference," but she would just settle into the kitchen nook, humming loudly until he gave in. Our haven was subtly becoming a waiting room for her emotional needs. "You look exhausted, Ava," she commented one Tuesday afternoon, watching me stack fresh diapers in the nursery closet. She didn't offer to help. I remember when I was pregnant with Tiffany, I had to watch everything I ate. Some people just balloon, you know? It's the hormones. They make you lazy. I forced a smile, folding a tiny onesie. "I'm sure you looked wonderful, Bethany. But I'm healthy. And the doctor is happy with my weight." "Right. Well, I'm just saying," she continued, her eyes sweeping over the room, settling on the expensive Italian crib we had purchased. "Marcus deserves a wife who takes care of herself. Especially with all this stress he's under at work." The stress she mentioned was her own making, of course, but I let it slide. I had spent years mastering the art of letting Bethany's barbs slide, believing that if I kept the peace, she would eventually get bored and leave. I didn't realize that she wasn't trying to needle me into giving up. She was simply preparing the nest for the snake she was about to introduce. She was clearing the space for the real poison. It arrived a week later, smelling faintly of cheap perfume and feigned innocence. "Marcus," Bethany chirped, pushing a young woman with sharp, hungry eyes into our foyer. "This is Chloe. She's been having a really rough time since her boyfriend left her. I told her she absolutely had times to meet you two. She needs a fresh start." Chloe smiled, a slow, practiced curl of her lip, that didn't reach her eyes and looked directly at Marcus, completely ignoring me. "Your house is stunning," Chloe purred, her gaze lingering on the closed door of Marcus's office. "I bet it's nice working here, away from all the corporate noise." The way she said corporate noise made it sound like I was the source of all distraction. I watched as Bethany gave Chloe a quick, confirming glance. The game, I soon realized, had officially begun. They didn't just want access to the house. They wanted to seize the throne. The throne they sought wasn't carved from gold. It was built from the quiet confidence Marcus and I shared, the unspoken promise of our future, and the attack was immediately structured, methodical, and chillingly effective. Bethany explained that Chloe was a newly certified virtual assistant who needed a safe, calm place to get her fledgling business off the ground. "She just needs a few hours a day, Ava, until she can afford her own place," Bethany cooed, giving me a look that dared me to refuse. "She's so quiet you won't even know she's here. She could use the little table near the pool. It's perfect lighting for her laptop, and she promises to be silent." The little table near the indoor pool was, inconveniently, about 20 feet from the door to Marcus's newly established private office. It was a high-traffic area for anyone needing a glass of water or a quick walk to stretch their legs. It was a perfect strategic foothold. I didn't want a complete stranger, whom I already distrusted, camped near my husband's workplace, but arguing would only prompt the wounded sighs and the abandonment narrative from Bethany. "Fine," I said, rubbing the small of my back, feeling the tension already beginning to coil tight in my shoulders. "But Marcus needs absolute quiet. No distractions." Bethany smiled, a triumphant, secretive gesture she only made when she felt she had won a small battle. "Oh, she's a professional, Ava. Unlike some people, she knows how to respect boundaries." And so, Chloe became a fixture. In the first week, she was harmless, clad in loose t-shirts and jeans, her hair pulled back into a messy bun. She tapped diligently on her laptop, wearing noise-canceling headphones, projecting an image of earnest, desperate employment. Marcus didn't even notice her. But the mask slipped on Friday. I was finishing up lunch in the kitchen when Marcus emerged from his office, stretching his arms above his head. He was talking on the phone with a colleague, detailing an investment strategy, completely focused on the conversation. Chloe chose that exact moment to take her break. She stood up from the pool table. Gone were the loose clothes. She was wearing a perfectly fitted pair of white yoga pants and a tiny athletic crop top that defied gravity. It was clothing meant to be seen, not for remote work. She wasn't wearing the headphones anymore. She didn't move towards the kitchen or the front door. She moved toward the glass wall of the pool enclosure. She pretended to be examining the light fixtures, positioning herself directly in Marcus's peripheral vision. Marcus, mid-sentence, paused. Not because he was looking at her, but because his eyes naturally drifted to the movement. His expression was that of annoyance at being slightly interrupted. Chloe saw the glance. She immediately dropped a pen, a slow, deliberate, theatrical drop, and bent to pick it up, holding the pose far longer than necessary. Her body arched. I watched the entire sequence from the kitchen island, feeling cold fury rise in my throat. It was calculated. It wasn't an accident. When she finally straightened, she noticed me, standing in the doorway, my pregnant belly a hard, round barrier between us. "Oh, Ava," she exclaimed, placing a hand over her chest as if genuinely startled. "I didn't realize you were there. Just stretching. This laptop work really messes up your posture." She gave a sickly sweet smile and retreated quickly back to her station. When Marcus hung up, he came over to me, kissing my forehead. "What's wrong? You look pale. Did you see what she was doing?" I asked, keeping my voice low. Marcus frowned. "Chloe? Working, I guess? Look, I barely notice she's here. She's just sitting there quietly. Bethany really did us a favor finding her a place to land." "Marcus, she was practically modeling by the pool enclosure," I insisted. He sighed, already weary. "Honey, she's young. She's wearing workout gear. It's what young people wear now. You're stressed about Leo coming early. Don't start looking for problems where there aren't any. He had already swallowed Bethany's lie whole. That I was paranoid. That I was looking for drama. The real escalation came the following Monday. The indoor pool area was rarely used by us, reserved for quiet evenings. But that afternoon, the air grew heavy with the scent of chlorine and expensive moisturizer. I walked past the pool, heading towards the living room, when I stopped dead. Chloe wasn't at the little table. She was inside the pool enclosure, not swimming, but perched on the edge of the submerged bench in the hot tub. She was wearing a bikini, a stringy, vibrant red scrap of fabric that offered less coverage than my underwear. She wasn't wet, so she hadn't been swimming. She was reading a book, ostensibly relaxing, her skin glistening slightly under the azure light of the pool lamps, but the hot tub faced directly toward the large bay window of Marcus's office. If he so much as looked up from his monitor, she was the first thing he would see. A perfect, glistening pin-up calendar girl framed by the 1970 seconds terracotta tiles of Times My Times home. I pushed open the heavy glass door. The warm, humid air hit me like a wall. "Chloe," I said, my voice sharp and cold. "I thought you were here to work." She looked up slowly, feigning a deep breath of relaxation. "Oh, I was. I just finished a huge project for a client. Bethany said you guys don't use the pool during the day, and it's so hot outside. I thought I'd take advantage of the quiet before I packed up for the day." "This is not a public spa, Chloe. It's our private residence," I stated, walking closer until I stood over her, casting a shadow. "When you are done with your work, you need to leave. You are not a house guest. You are an acquaintance of my sister-in-law. And you need to keep your clothes on and stay away from my husband's office area." Chloe's expression didn't crumble into tears or panic. Instead, her hungry eyes hardened just for a split second, a flash of pure, cold resentment. Then, just as quickly, she manufactured a wobble in her voice. "I'm so sorry, Ava. I didn't mean to offend you. I really need this distraction-free space. I'll dry off immediately." She climbed out of the hot tub, her movements unnecessarily slow, the thin straps of the red bikini cutting into her skin. I watched as she wrapped a towel around herself, a towel I owned, and sauntered past me, ensuring she was positioned for maximum impact when she passed Marcus's office door on her way out. When I confronted Marcus later, the gaslighting tactic was fully deployed. "She was in a bikini, Marcus, right in front of your window. She's deliberately trying to get your attention." Marcus didn't even look up from his dinner plate. "Ava, it's a house with an indoor pool. People wear swimsuits around pools. You're being irrational. Honestly, it's getting exhausting. You need to focus on resting, not turning every young woman Bethany introduces us to into a conspiracy theorist." That night, lying awake next to the man who refused to believe his intuition was being systematically destroyed, I understood the true scope of the attack. They weren't just trying to lure Marcus, they were trying to isolate me. They were at war with my judgment, chipping away at my sanity, piece by piece, until Marcus believed their version of reality, not mine. I realized I couldn't rely on him to see the snake. I had to catch it myself. The war wasn't fought with screams or thrown plates. It was fought in the silence, in the subtle erosion of my confidence, and in the constant low-frequency hum of their presence. Since the bikini incident, I stopped waiting for Marcus to protect me. I shifted from being a happy, expectant mother to an armed sentinel, charting every move, every interaction, and every insidious comment. The house, once my sanctuary, was now a containment field. Bethany, sensing the shift in my mood, intensified her psychological warfare. She stopped criticizing my weight directly, and moved on to my capacity as a mother. I was reading an article about prenatal stress, she mentioned one afternoon, stirring her coffee at our kitchen island, the very picture of faux concern. It said the baby's nervous system is permanently affected by the mother's anxiety. "I just worry about you, Ava. You seem so tense lately. You should focus on resting, for Leo's sake." It was the perfect poison, cloaked in care, targeting my deepest vulnerability, My unborn child. Every time I questioned Chloe's motives, every time I voiced my discomfort, Bethany would echo her worry about my stress levels, turning my justifiable fear into a narcissistic failing that could harm my son. Marcus, hearing this repeated mantra, began to use it himself. "You have to calm down, Ava," he'd plead, rubbing his temples after a long day in the office. "Bethany is right. This isn't good for the baby. Just ignore Chloe, okay? She'll be gone soon." But Chloe was not ignoring us. She was getting bolder. Her shift was precise, moving from overt sexual posturing, the hot tub, to calculated intimacy. She started leaving items behind, not personal items that would force a confrontation, but subtle markers. One morning, I found a half-eaten gourmet lollipop, lavender and honey, sitting on the corner of Marcus's desk blotter, right where he always rested his wrist. It wasn't mine. And Marcus only drank black coffee. When I picked it up, I noticed a tiny handwritten note tucked underneath. It simply read, "Stress relief?" It worked for me. The use of the casual smiley face, the assumption of shared stress, the personalization of the gesture. It was all designed to suggest a shared, secret understanding. I felt the blood drain from my face. I walked straight to Marcus, holding the pink candy stick like it was a deadly syringe. "What is this?" My voice was tight. Marcus glanced up from his monitor, annoyed at the interruption. "What is what? A lollipop? It was on your desk. Chloe left it. With a note. Marcus, she's leaving gifts. In your private space. Don't you see how completely inappropriate that is?" He rubbed the bridge of his nose, his patience thin. "She probably thought she was being nice. She knows I've been putting in extra hours. It's a thank you gesture, Ava. She uses that desk near the pool. She's probably trying to be polite because she's using our space." Polite? If she wanted to be polite, she would leave it on the kitchen counter. "This is an escalation," I insisted. "No, Ava. You times are the escalation," he countered, his voice rising, instantly shutting down my argument with an aggressive tone I hadn't heard from him before. "I am trying to run a national team from this office. I cannot have you creating dramatic scenarios around every mundane item that crosses my path. Please. Stop this. Focus on the pregnancy. You are turning into someone I don't recognize." The words "times turning into someone I don't recognize" times hit me harder than any of Bethany's barbs. He had completely reversed the reality. I wasn't paranoid, I was reacting to a clear threat. And he had convinced himself that times was the source of instability. I retreated, holding back tears. The gaslighting was nearly complete. But I wasn't done observing. A few days later, the physical barrier was broken. Marcus had stepped out briefly to take a package from the delivery driver. I was making tea in the kitchen, watching the corridor. Chloe, instead of staying near her pool table, walked briskly toward the office door. She didn't knock. She didn't pause. She simply opened the door and walked inside. When Marcus returned, he was immediately focused on the contents of the package. I rushed toward the office, catching Chloe just as she was leaning over Marcus's monitor, pointing at something. Her head was close to his shoulder, and her fingers rested lightly on his arm, a casual, proprietary touch that lasted a fraction of a second too long. "Oh, Marcus, I just needed to show you this quick setting on the printer," Chloe chirped, pulling her hand away only when she saw me standing in the doorway, my presence demanding attention. "Sorry to interrupt, Ava, just a quick tech issue." Marcus looked genuinely startled to see her there. "Chloe, what are you doing in here? I told you this office is private." His reaction was swift. A small victory. But Chloe recovered instantly. She looked hurt, her eyes welling up with practiced moisture. "I'm so sorry, Marcus. I just overheard you struggling with the print settings from the hallway, and I know exactly how to fix it. I was just trying to help. I didn't mean to overstep." She turned to me, her voice trembling slightly. "Ava, I promise. I was just trying to be a good neighbor." And then, she left the office, walking past us with a bowed head and a sniffle, projecting the image of a helpful young woman chastised for her kindness. I waited for Marcus to turn to me, to validate my long-standing anxiety. Instead, he closed the office door with a loud thud, his face etched with frustration. "See? This is exactly what I mean," he hissed, lowering his voice fiercely. "She was trying to help, and you stand there like a jailer, making her feel terrible for offering assistance. Now she's upset, and I look like an ungrateful jerk. She's had a rough divorce, Ava. Can we please show some basic human charity? Human charity doesn't involve touching your arm and invading your private workspace." I shot back, my heart pounding against my ribs. She wasn't helping. She was checking her boundary. And you just gave her a free pass because she cried. Marcus sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. "I can't do this anymore. You are fixated on this idea that she's trying to seduce me, when she's clearly just struggling and being kind. You are creating such a toxic atmosphere in this house. You need to pull yourself together. I need a wife who supports me, not one who interrogates every employee or acquaintance I interact with." He paused, then delivered the final crushing blow, the words Bethany had successfully planted in his mind. "Honestly, I think you need to talk to the doctor about your hormones. This paranoia is not normal and it's stressing me out immensely." He turned back to his desk, dismissing me completely. I stood there, momentarily paralyzed by the cruelty of his dismissal. He wasn't just ignoring the threat. He was joining the enemy. He had chosen Bethany and Chloe's narrative, the one where I was the hysterical, pregnant liability over my lived reality. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the click of Marcus's keyboard. I looked at the closed door, at the quiet house that felt so violently breached, and a cold clarity settled over me. If Marcus wasn't going to open his eyes, I would have to give him something undeniable to see. I had to stop arguing and start documenting. I wasn't paranoid. I was right. And I needed proof, not validation. The war was officially transitioning from psychological defense to evidence collection. I needed a dossier, and I knew exactly where to start. The metallic click of the Secure File app on my phone sounded loud in the middle of the night. It was disguised as a budget tracking application, its contents locked behind 2 passwords. This was my dossier, and it would be the bedrock of my sanity. I couldn't trust my memory anymore. Marcus had weaponized my distress, defining my perfectly rational observations as hormonal paranoia. So, I replaced emotion with data. Entry 1. Date: 10/14. Time: 1:30 p.m. Offense: physical posturing. The bikini. Location: indoor pool. Details: vibrant red string bikini. Purposeful slow exit near office window. Marcus was momentarily distracted. Result: Marcus dismissed my concern as irrational. Entry 2. Day: 10/17. Time: 4:45 de l'après-midi. Offense: intrusive gift. Location: Marcus's desk blotter. Details: lavender honey lollipop with handwritten note, stress relief. Result: Marcus accused me of creating dramatic scenarios. Entry 3. Date: 10/19. Time: 11:15 a.m. Offense: boundary testing. Physical touch. Location: private office. Details: entered uninvited to fix printer setting. Fingers rested lightly on Marcus's arm. Result: Marcus chastised me for making Chloe feel terrible. The documentation was draining, turning my life into a series of ugly timestamps. But it also provided a quiet, numerical power. They couldn't gaslight a spreadsheet. The next step was technology. We had invested in a high-end smart home security system when we moved in, complete with internal sensors and a few discrete cameras covering the main living areas and entry points. Marcus controlled the master account, but I was the one who had set up the guest profiles. Late one evening, after Marcus had collapsed exhausted from a day filled with Bethany's invasive calls and Chloe's calculated proximity, I slipped out of bed. I logged into the security system through the secondary profile I had created months ago for the house cleaner. Access was limited, but enough. I could view the live feeds and, crucially, access short recorded clips triggered by motion in the high-traffic areas near the laundry room corridor and the pool. More importantly, I needed audio. Marcus was deeply invested in his new home office setup. Before the move, he had bought 2 smart speakers, one for ambient music in his office and a second for the living room, mostly for checking the weather or playing Leo's future lullabies. What he hadn't fully configured was the intercom feature, which allowed remote listening. I accessed the settings on the speaker closest to his office, slightly increasing the ambient listening sensitivity and ensuring that all audio clips were stored in the cloud backup accessible from my phone, no matter how much he might try to wipe the local logs. I felt like an intruder in my own home, a spy observing my own slow-motion downfall. But the alternative was letting them succeed in isolating me completely. I waited for the next act in Chloe's performance, knowing it would come soon. She had established the initial patterns: gifts, accidental physical closeness, and playing the victim when challenged. Now she needed to solidify her presence. It happened 2 days later. It was 10 a.m., a time when Marcus was guaranteed to be submerged in calls. I was upstairs packing hospital bags, monitoring the security feed on a tablet tucked into the bottom of a laundry basket. Chloe was at her station by the pool, diligently typing. She looked perfect today. Sleek ponytail, designer glasses, and a very expensive-looking silk blouse that seemed utterly inappropriate for casual remote work. Then, she stood up. Not for a stretch or a walk to the kitchen. She walked to the exterior door and returned a moment later, carrying a pristine white paper cup with a colorful cafe logo, an obvious, personalized latte from the boutique coffee shop 3 miles away. Marcus only drank lukewarm black coffee from a thermos he filled at 6 a.m. This was not for him. This was a prop. I watched her walk down the corridor, past the laundry room, stopping directly outside Marcus's office door. She didn't knock. She raised her hand, ready to enter unannounced again. I didn't move. I wanted this recorded. But just as her hand reached the knob, Marcus's door opened from the inside. He was on the phone, one hand cupped over the receiver, his face irritated. He must have been trying to stretch his legs during a momentary lull. Chloe froze. Her practiced, helpful smile evaporated when she saw the annoyed expression on his face. "Marcus, I brought you this," she chirped, holding up the latte with theatrical brightness. "It's a specialty blend. I know you work so hard, and I thought you needed a treat." Marcus barely looked at the cup. He looked at her, then at the closed door of his office, and then back to her. His gaze was cold, unreadable, and devoid of the tired patience he usually reserved for her and Bethany. "Chloe," he said, his voice clipped, not breaking his teleconference rhythm, "I'm in the middle of a call, and I don't drink those. You need to return to your table. This area is strictly private." It was a slight, subtle rejection, but a rejection nonetheless. Chloe's face visibly tightened. She didn't cry this time. She just looked confused, as if his rejection had short-circuited her programming. She mumbled something about just trying to be nice, and retreated awkwardly, carrying the unappreciated, high-priced offering. I felt a surge of validation. He hadn't invited her in. He had established a boundary. But the real evidence came when I reviewed the audio captured by the smart speaker moments before and after the interaction. The footage captured the silence in the hallway after Chloe retreated, followed by her hushed conversation with someone on her cell phone just outside the pool enclosure. The audio was faint, partially muffled by the sound of the pool filters, but clear enough. He was rude. Totally rude. Chloe hissed into the phone. "He pushed me away. I did exactly what you said, Bethany. I used the coffee, I put on the silk blouse, and he still rejected me." A pause. I could hear the tinny, rapid-fire sound of Bethany's voice responding, No, I didn't push it." But he's clearly resisting. Maybe because she's always hovering. "She's staring at me like a hawk, Bethany. I need him alone in the office." It's the only way it will look like he initiated it. What about tonight? Another pause, Bethany's voice rising slightly in urgency. Yes, I know about the guilt. But she's getting to him. Look, I need you to create a diversion. Get him out of the house. Or I'll go in while he's showering. I need a clear shot, B. This whole thing is taking too long. The line clicked dead. I sat back on the bed, the portable screen illuminating my face in the dark room. It wasn't just my paranoia. It wasn't just a friendly acquaintance overstepping. This was a conspiracy, cold and deliberate. The phrases, he pushed me away. She's staring at me like a hawk. And most damningly, I need him alone in the office. Confirmed that their entire presence was focused on seduction and disruption. It wasn't passive. It was tactical. My hands were shaking. But not from fear. From realization. The sound recording was irrefutable proof of intent, linking Chloe's actions directly to Bethany. I saved the clip immediately, renaming the file. *conspiracy. Confirmed. 10:04 a.m. I still couldn't tell Marcus. Not yet. He had already dismissed me so cruelly, convinced I was the source of instability. If I presented him with this audio now, Bethany would simply spin it. Chloe was just venting to her friend about a tough day at work. I needed Marcus to see it, not just hear it, and I needed the proof to land when he was most vulnerable, most isolated, and completely awake to the threat. I went back to my dossier, updating the entry with the new data. The target was his isolation, and the timeline was being aggressively accelerated by Bethany. I realized my next move couldn't be defense, it had to be a setup. I had to let them think they were winning, create a vacuum of attention, and let Chloe make her final, irreversible mistake. I closed the secure app, replacing the spy with the pregnant wife, ready to watch and wait. I had all the evidence I needed to prove the snake was in the nest. Now I just needed to catch it biting. I wore the mask of the placid, heavily pregnant wife for 2 days, moving slowly, speaking softly, doing everything Marcus and Bethany had instructed me to do. I needed to relax, for Leo's sake, but inside, I was coiled wire. My heart hammered with the constant awareness of the recorded audio clip, hidden deep in my phone. I knew the attack was imminent. Chloe needed her clear shot, and Bethany was running out of patience. The opportunity arose late on a Tuesday night. Marcus had been stressed and exhausted, sinking into the sofa at 9 p.m. and falling into a deep, drug-like sleep. I knew he wouldn't stir. Pregnancy insomnia, combined with my hypervigilance, meant I hadn't truly slept in days, and tonight was no different. It was 1:47 a.m. when I heard the subtle sound, not a loud thud, but a soft, intentional click times, near the back entrance. Chloe had been using the key Marcus had given Bethany, who had clearly passed it on to her accomplice, to make her earlier visits appear legitimate. Now, she was using it for an unauthorized night operation. I slid out of bed, careful not to wake Marcus. The house was cold and silent. I didn't turn on any lights. I moved like a ghost down the stairs, using the moonlight filtering through the high ranch windows. The air near the indoor pool was thick and humid, smelling of old chlorine. I crept down the hall leading to the laundry room and Marcus's office, my hand resting protectively over my massive belly. I wasn't scared of her. I was furious at the audacity. I saw her before she saw me. Chloe was a shadow standing in the narrow corridor right outside the sealed office door. She wasn't wearing the silk blouse tonight. She was dressed entirely in black. Leggings, a black hoodie pulled tight over her head, and soft running shoes. She looked like a burglar, not a remote virtual assistant. She was not trying to enter the office. She was doing something much more unsettling. She was applying a thin layer of grease or maybe Vaseline to the doorknob. The texture was meant to mimic sweat, or perhaps a struggle. She was staging a scene. As she finished her meticulous work, she raised her phone, positioning it carefully against the dark wood of the doorframe. She was waiting to record something. I realized her plan wasn't just to enter, It was to stage a forceful entry, and then record the aftermath. Perhaps to claim Mark assaulted or harassed her times after hours. I reached out and flicked on the industrial overhead light in the laundry room, flooding the narrow corridor with harsh, unforgiving white. Chloe screamed a sharp, panicked sound that pierced the silence. She spun around, dropping her phone, which skittered across the terracotta tile floor. The small tube of grease rolled into the shadows. "Ava!" she gasped, her black clothing suddenly making her look juvenile and exposed. I walked toward her. Slowly, deliberately, forcing her to shrink back. My voice was a low, steady thrum of absolute authority, devoid of the hysteria she expected. "What are you doing here, Chloe?" She started scrambling, trying to retrieve the phone and the tube at the same time. I came back for my laptop charger. I must have left it, in the middle of the night? In a disguise that suggests you're trying to break in? I gestured to the dark clothing. "Don't lie to me, you are staging an event. You're trying to make it look like Marcus brought you in here, or that you were fighting him off." My directness startled her. She dropped the facade of sweet incompetence. Her eyes narrowed in pure hatred, the same flash I had seen the day of the bikini incident. "You're sick, Ava," she spat, recovering slightly. "You're crazy. You're having delusions. You followed me down here." "I heard the key," I corrected, stopping only a few feet away. "The key my husband gave his sister, the key she gave to you, her accomplice. We both know what you're doing here. And we both know who sent you." Before I could say anything more, I heard Marcus's voice from the top of the stairs, thick with sleep and alarm. "Ava? What is going on down there? Who screamed?" This was her moment. Chloe looked past me toward the stairs, and her face instantly crumpled. The hatred vanished, replaced by an astonishing, theatrical terror. She began to sob, loud, racking sobs that sounded far too painful to be fake. She didn't look at me. She covered her face with her hands and stumbled backwards, collapsing dramatically against the wall. "Marcus. Oh God, Marcus, she's scaring me. She followed me in here and she's yelling at me." Marcus descended the stairs rapidly, running the last few steps. He took in the scene. The harsh light, Chloe sobbing hysterically, and me, 6 months pregnant, standing stiffly in my oversized robe, looking like a furious sentinel. He didn't notice the black clothes or the tube of grease. He only saw the trauma. "Chloe, are you all right?" Marcus rushed straight past me, his protective instinct overriding his common sense. He put his hands on her shoulders. "I just came back from my charger, Marcus," she choked out, her head still bowed. She started screaming at me, saying I was a criminal and calling me awful names. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cause drama. I didn't think anyone would be up." Marcus pulled away slightly, turning his bewildered, angry gaze toward me. "Ava, what in God's name are you doing? Why is Chloe here at 2 in the morning? And why are you attacking her?" I felt the immense, cold weight of betrayal settle on my chest. I had just caught the predator in the act, staging her next move, and he was comforting her, not me. "She's lying, Marcus. She didn't come back for a charger. Look at her. She's wearing all black. She used a key to get in. She was applying something to the doorknob. She's setting you up," I pleaded, pointing at the dark, exposed figure cowering against the wall. Marcus looked from the crying woman to me, his face hardened by exhaustion and the programmed guilt Bethany had instilled over decades. "Setting me up for what, Ava? Do you hear yourself? You are accusing a frightened young woman who is trying to rebuild her life of an elaborate criminal conspiracy, because she misplaced her charger? You are the one in a black robe screaming obscenities in the middle of the night." He rubbed his eyes, disappointment heavy in his voice. "You were right next to me in bed. Why didn't you wake me up? Why did you sneak down here just to ambush her? Because I knew you wouldn't believe me," I yelled, the dam of controlled rage finally breaking. "You never believe me. You always choose her drama over my safety. She is trying to ruin us, Marcus, and you are letting her do it." Chloe looked up from her hands, just enough for Marcus to catch her tear-streaked face. "I just want to go home, Marcus. I don't feel safe here anymore." Go, Marcus said, his attention focused entirely on Chloe. Go home, Chloe. I'm so sorry this happened. We will figure this out later. He stood there, physically protecting her as she grabbed her belongings and fled out the back door, leaving the silence ringing in the hallway. When the door clicked shut, Marcus turned back to me, the anger in his face now edged with true fear. Fear of my instability, not fear of the threat. You have crossed a line, Ava, he said, his voice dangerously low. A serious line. You are harassing that girl. You are letting this pregnancy anxiety drive you into an unhealthy paranoia that is making us look like monsters. We are hosts, Ava. We have a moral obligation to Bethany to help her friend. Moral obligation? I laughed, a short, desperate sound that tasted like salt and bile. You think your moral obligation is to the woman who is actively plotting to destroy your marriage? You're so poisoned by Bethany's guilt trip that you can't see a clear act of malice when it's standing right in front of you? I see a loving wife turning into a conspiracy theorist. He shot back. You talk about plots and setups? But you are the one who just ambushed her in the middle of the night. I am done with this. You need help, Ava. You need to focus on Leo and stop this obsession. You need to tell me right now that this stops. Or, I don't know how we move forward. His ultimatum was the final, devastating confirmation. He was completely lost to the manipulation. He was siding with the enemy. Even when the evidence of her ill intent was literally trembling in front of him. He wasn't choosing Chloe, but he was choosing the path of least resistance. The path that avoided confronting the monstrousness of his sister. I looked at him, the man I loved, standing there demanding that I sacrifice my sanity and my intuition for his peace. The cold clarity returned, stronger than before. I didn't need to argue anymore. He had given me exactly what I needed. Confirmation that he was deaf to my words, but not, perhaps, to irrefutable proof. I had the audio recording that detailed the conspiracy, and now I had the timeline. I didn't utter another word. I simply turned, walked back up the stairs, and locked myself back in the bedroom. I didn't want to be near him. I opened the secure app on my phone. I didn't write an entry about the confrontation. I didn't need to. I already had the evidence of the setup. I just stared at the recording I had saved days earlier. Asterisk, conspiracy confirmed. 10:04 a.m. Asterisk, I lay awake, listening to the muffled sounds of Marcus moving around downstairs, probably cleaning up the imaginary charger that Chloe had forgotten and waited for morning. I had given her a warning. Now, I would give Marcus his evidence. I would show him the snake, and I would make sure he saw it bite. I spent the next 48 hours wrapped in a performance of tranquil withdrawal. I moved slowly, spoke little, and kept my hands off my secure phone app, allowing the data I'd collected to ferment, waiting for the inevitable climax. I needed them to think they had won the battle of wills. I needed Chloe to feel safe enough to launch her final, irreversible attack. Marcus, relieved by my sudden silence, was easier to manage. He mistook my cold clarity for compliance. He was softer, attempting to apologize for his harshness that night, but still framing it as, "I'm sorry I yelled, but we both need to work on your stress levels, okay? I know you're trying." "I'm trying," I agreed, letting the ambiguity hang in the air. By Thursday afternoon, the tension was a physical thing. Thick and heavy, like the humid air near the indoor pool. Marcus had been in his office since 7 a.m., preparing for a major international presentation. I was upstairs, ostensibly resting, but actually watching the motion sensors on my hidden app. At 3:17 p.m., the motion sensor near the laundry corridor flared red. Chloe was moving. I didn't move from the bed. I simply placed my hands on my swollen belly, holding my breath, listening to the silence of the house. I had deactivated the intercom function on the living room smart speaker hours ago, but the one near Marcus's office was still recording. I watched the live video feed. Chloe, dressed impeccably today in a tight, pencil skirt and blouse corporate predator attire, stood by the door of the private office. She knocked once, sharply, before opening it without waiting for an answer. Marcus? I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I just heard from Bethany. She says there's a critical message about the delivery of the new company server you need to look at immediately. She said it's too sensitive for email. A perfect, Bethany-crafted excuse. Urgent, sensitive, and reliant on family connection. I saw Chloe slip inside and close the door behind her. The audio feed was muffled, but I could hear Marcus's exasperated voice. Chloe, I told Bethany. I'm in the middle of the European presentation. I can't look at a server delivery now. But she said it affects the security protocols. And she specifically told me to bring it in here. Right now. To you. Chloe's voice was close, sweet, and low, the tone of a confidant sharing a secret. There was a shifting sound, and the rustle of papers. Marcus was probably turning away from his desk to face the interruption. Then, the ambient noise changed. The sound of shuffling, a quiet Times thud asterisk, and then silence, a sudden suffocating silence. My heart hammered in my chest. I stared at the phone. I couldn't see anything. Only the static image of the closed door on the video feed. But the audio was still streaming. The silence broke with a gasp, not Marcus's, but Chloe's. Heavy and manufactured. Marcus, she whispered, her voice sticky with fake urgency. I can't stand watching you stress over this. You work too hard. You carry too much. Chloe, back up. Marcus's voice was harsh, strained. Just relax, she murmured. You shouldn't be this tense. Especially not with her time's stress compounding yours. Bethany told me how awful she makes things. The audio signal suddenly jumped, indicating movement. A sharp, clear sound of fabric ripping. And then, Chloe's voice, now brazen, no longer feigned. You deserve someone who sees you, Marcus. Not some fat, pregnant shrew who spends all day worrying about her weight and neglecting you. I see what you need. The fat, pregnant shrew. It was Bethany's language. The final piece of the venomous narrative they had built together. It was the insult that pierced not just my marriage, but my identity as a future mother. The audio exploded then. Not with Chloe's planned whimpers, but with Marcus's raw, bellowing rage. Asterisk, asterisk, get out. Now. Asterisk, asterisk. The volume was so high it clipped the microphone feed. The air in the house seemed to vibrate with the force of his command. The next sounds were rapid and frantic. The screech of Chloe's chair being shoved back, her high-pitched yelp of genuine fear, and the scramble of her expensive shoes across the terracotta floor. The office door crashed open, revealing Chloe running full tilt down the corridor, and bursting out the back door, leaving her purse and the server information, if it existed, behind. Silence returned. Absolute and terrifying. I waited 5 seconds. 10. I heard the door slam shut again. But this time, it was the front door, slamming Chloe out of our home for good. Then, the soft, shaky sound of the office door opening again. Marcus wasn't running. He was stumbling. I heard him call my name, not with anger or weariness, but with sheer, desperate terror. Ava, Ava, where are you? I walked out of the bedroom, crossing the hallway to the top of the stairs. I looked down at him. Marcus was standing at the foot of the stairs, still dressed in his crisp shirt and tie, but he was white as a sheet. His hair mussed, his posture destroyed. He looked like he'd just survived a physical assault. He didn't even look up. He sprinted up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, until he stood right in front of me. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't offer an excuse. He simply dropped his head onto my shoulder, his arms circling my swollen body with a grip so tight it was almost painful. He was shaking violently. "Oh my God, Ava. Oh my God," he choked out, his voice thick with shame. "You were right. You were right about everything." He pulled back, gripping my shoulders and forcing me to look at him. His eyes were wide and red, flooded not with tears, but with the dawning horror of realization. "She tried to kiss me," he whispered, the words ragged. "I pushed her off. But she said things. She called you that. She said that times needed better, because you were stressing me out. She was trying to stage a scenario, Ava. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. She locked the door. She was trying to destroy us. The fact that he was confessing this, raw and without prompting, proved the manipulation had broken. Chloe hadn't just tried to seduce him. She had delivered Bethany's entire toxic manifesto right to his face, in his sanctuary. "I am so sorry," he said, the words barely audible. He didn't apologize for yelling at me the night before. He apologized for the entire systematic betrayal. I let her do this. I was so convinced that I owed Bethany, that I convinced myself you were the enemy. I let them gaslight you, Ava. I let them call you crazy. I watched you suffer for weeks. And I kept siding with the lie because the truth was easier than facing my sister. I am so sorry. Tears finally tracked paths through the dust of the last few weeks on his face. This wasn't the tired, dismissive husband. This was the man I married. Finally liberated from his sister's suffocating grasp. The lollipop, the bikini. "The key in the middle of the night," I said, my voice steady. "You see it now?" "I see everything," he rasped, holding my face gently. "I just pushed the actual snake out of the nest. I need to make sure the mastermind is dealt with now. Bethany." His face hardened again, transforming the shame into a steely resolve I hadn't seen since the first year of our marriage. "I need to call the police. I need to change every lock in this house, and I need to cut off every line of communication with Bethany, permanently. We will have a court order within the hour. No more excuses, no more guilt. You and Leo are the only things that matter." His total surrender to my reality, his complete validation, was the immediate antidote to the slow psychological poisoning. The war was no longer mine alone. We were finally, unequivocally, on the same side. "Before you call the police," I said, pulling my phone from the pocket of my robe, "I have something you need to hear first. It explains exactly what she intended tonight." I unlocked the secure app and navigated to the file I had labeled *conspiracy confirmed 10:04 a.m. I pressed play. Marcus listened. Completely silent, as Chloe's hushed, urgent voice filled the hallway. He was rude. Totally rude. "I need him alone in the office. It's the only way it will look like he initiated it." "What about tonight?" "I need you to create a diversion. I need a clear shot, B. This whole thing is taking too long." When the recording ended, Marcus stared at the phone, then at me. His eyes were cold, distant, and filled with a dangerous resolve. He didn't look at his phone. He looked at mine. "They were filming this," he said, his voice a flat statement of fact. "She was trying to set up a situation where I was alone with her, and she had an alibi of just trying to help. The phone she dropped last night, she was setting up a camera." He stepped away, walking back down the stairs toward the office, no longer stumbling but moving with purpose. "I'm calling the police. I'm giving them this audio. And before I do that, I'm calling my sister. I owe her nothing but the truth now." He didn't wait for my answer. Marcus sprinted past me and tore down the stairs. I followed him as quickly as my body allowed, navigating the dim hallway until I reached the open door of his sanctuary, now a confirmed crime scene. Chloe's purse was still on the floor near the shredded leather chair, but what caught Marcus's eye was the small, sleek burner phone resting innocently on the corner of his desk blotter. It must have fallen out of her tightly zipped black hoodie pocket during the struggle. Marcus snatched it up, his movements quick and decisive. He looked at the locked screen, then back at me. "She must have a simple code. Birthday? 1111? Try her ex-husband's year of birth," I suggested, my mind oddly clinical despite the adrenaline pumping through me. She talked about him incessantly. He tried a combination, and the phone buzzed open. Marcus didn't hesitate. He bypassed the recent calls and went straight to the messaging app. He scrolled past quick exchanges with clients and delivery confirmations, until he reached the top-pinned conversation. *B*. Bethany. he muttered, his voice flat. He started reading, initially skimming, then slowing, his posture freezing as if ice water had been poured over him. I leaned over his shoulder, reading the glowing screen with him. The messages weren't casual. They were a meticulously detailed, months-long script. It was a director feeding lines and stage directions to an actress. Bethany, 9/28. He's getting too focused on the baby room. You need to be more present near the office. Remember, subtle. Wear the tight gray yoga outfit when he's on his break. Make her look irrelevant. Chloe, 9/28. Got it. She's already stressed. She keeps asking him to lock the office door. But I'm worried she'll catch me. Bethany, 10/10. She's just a hysterical pregnant liability. Ignore her screaming. Marcus is weak when he feels guilty, and he always feels guilty about me. Keep pushing the limits. The bikini in the hot tub was genius, Chloe. He couldn't look away. My blood ran cold. Tracing the path from the subtle, frustrating moments of the last month to the clinical, written malice in front of us. They hadn't just been manipulating Marcus, they had been dissecting me. Marcus scrolled down again, his finger hovering over a recent thread from a few days ago, right after Chloe's first forced entry into the office. Chloe, 10/19. She knows. I saw it in her eyes. I had to cry and play the victim, or he would have kicked me out. Bethany, 10/19. Good girl. Keep the focus on her instability. Remind him he needs a wife who is calm. If this continues, we pivot to the backup plan. The window is closing, Chloe. I need you to finish this soon. Before the baby arrives. He won't leave her if she has the baby. We need to kill that connection now. Marcus made a choked sound. I didn't need him to elaborate. Kill that connection. It wasn't just about destroying our marriage. It was about preventing our family from becoming whole. Then came the final, gut-wrenching confirmation of the conspiracy. A message dated just hours before the attempt on the desk. Bethany. Today, 1:45 p.m. Marcus is running the European pitch. He'll be completely stressed and emotionally drained. Go in with the fake server emergency. Remember what I told you. Use the fat pregnant shrew line if he resists. It pushes his buttons about what a burden Ava is. Get the kiss, and make sure you get some audio. We need to prove he made the first move. Marcus stepped back from the desk, letting the phone clatter onto the wood. He didn't look at the screen anymore. He looked at the door he had just pushed Chloe out of. Then back at me. His eyes wide and dark with a terrifying mix of realization and self-loathing. She was setting me up for statutory harassment, he whispered, barely audible. She was going to film me rejecting her, and then claim I tried to force something. They had a phrase for you, Ava. They called you a times fat pregnant shrew. He didn't need to repeat the line about killing the connection. The violation of the unborn child was the sharpest stab of all. It's not just a sister being difficult, Ava, Marcus said, his voice stealing. This is calculated, multi-month criminal conspiracy to commit slander, harassment, and potentially, if they could prove a crime, ruin my career. All because she felt abandoned. The shame had vanished, replaced by an incandescent, cold rage. The guilt that Bethany had leveraged for 3 decades finally evaporated, scorched away by the undeniable evidence of her malice toward our child. He moved with the speed of a man who suddenly had everything to lose. He didn't touch the phone again. He walked straight to the office wall, found the smart home panel, and began furiously typing in commands. New door codes? He stated, not asking my permission. All external doors, all windows, done. He pulled his own phone from his pocket, navigated to his banking app, and started clicking. I'm stopping all direct deposit transfers I used to send Bethany for her expenses. Gone. Then came the final, brutal cut. He opened his contacts list, found Times Bethany's cell asterisk, and without pausing, he pressed Times block contact asterisk. That's the end of it, he announced, his chest heaving. No more contact, no more apologies, no more excuses. We are severing every single thread she has to our life. Effective immediately. He looked at me then, holding my gaze over the ravaged desk, his face a perfect picture of resolution. This stops now, Ava, he stated, the words clipped and final. We need physical security, and we need the police. We have all the proof we need, on this desk. We are going to the police station right now, and we are not stopping until she is locked out of our lives forever. He didn't wait for my agreement. He snatched up the burner phone, holding the evidence tightly, and moved toward the office door. The war wasn't psychological anymore. It was an act of cold, necessary execution. We were unified, armed with the undeniable truth, and ready to take the battle outside. Marcus kept his word. We didn't stop for coats, just grabbed my hospital bag packed days ago in a cold state of armed readiness and headed straight out the door, the burner phone clutched in his hand. The urgency was palpable, a kinetic fury replacing weeks of paralyzing guilt. By 9 p.m., Marcus had walked the police through the office, displaying the text threads like irrefutable blueprints of a crime. We filed the formal report, documenting the intrusion, the threats, and the months of harassment. Chloe's burner phone was bagged and labeled as primary evidence. By 10:30 p.m., the restraining order paperwork was officially filed against both Chloe and Bethany, citing repeated trespass and emotional manipulation that led directly to a hostile home environment. But even as the legal walls went up, Bethany found a way to hurl a final, desperate grenade. Marcus's work phone, his secure, professional device, buzzed insistently while we were sitting in the fluorescent-lit waiting room signing affidavits. Bethany couldn't call his cell, but she still had his professional contacts. He checked the screen, and his jaw tightened. She's emailing me now. A burner account. He opened the email, reading the block of frantic, unhinged text out loud, his voice flat with disbelief. You idiot, Marcus. Do you really think I'd go down for that bitch? Chloe is lying. That phone is fabricated. Ava is hysterical and she is ruining your life. Just like I told you she would. If you put me in jail, I swear to God, you will regret it. Your precious times, perfect times, life will burn, Marcus. You will never see your family again. You don't owe her anything, you owe times me times everything. He didn't finish the last paragraph, just deleted the email and blocked the address. She's desperate. She knows we have the proof. The anger, however, had done its job. It had energized Marcus, but it had finally broken me. We left the precinct around midnight. Exhausted but technically safe. The world outside felt quiet, oblivious to the war we had just concluded. As Marcus was pulling onto the highway, I felt the first, sharp spike of pain low in my abdomen. It wasn't the dull ache I'd been experiencing from carrying Leo for 33 weeks. It was a vicious, tightening clamp that stole my breath. Marcus, I gasped, clutching the seatbelt. Stop. We need to go back. Back where? Home? We're going straight home to sleep, sweetheart. No, not home, the hospital, now. I think I'm in labor. The look on his face, the instantaneous switch from steely resolve to sheer, animal panic was terrifying. He made an illegal U-turn across 3 lanes of traffic, the tires screeching a horrible soundtrack to our descent. It's too early, Ava, it's only 33 weeks. He stammered, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. It's just stress, honey, it's okay. We can slow it down. But the next contraction hit, fiercer than the first, and I realized with stark clarity that the months of walking on eggshells, the constant vigilance, the gaslighting, and the final, explosive confrontation had finally pushed my body past its breaking point. Bethany hadn't needed to physically harm me. The psychological poison had been potent enough to induce an early birth. We didn't make it to the maternity ward. We were rushed straight into emergency triage. The doctors were grim-faced. The delivery was fast and urgent, blurred by epidural, oxygen, and the overwhelming fear that everything we had fought for was about to be snatched away. Leo arrived small, blue, and terrifyingly silent. I only saw him for a split second, a tiny pale creature that looked too fragile to exist outside the womb. He was immediately whisked away, replaced by the chaotic sounds of medical professionals yelling numbers and rushing procedures. "He's breathing, Ava, he's breathing," Marcus whispered. Holding my hand so tightly I thought my bones might crack. He looked down at me, and his eyes were swimming in guilt. "This is my fault. All of it. I should have ended it the day she brought Chloe into the house." "No," I choked out, tears of pain and fear streaming into my hair. "We are here. We did what we had to do. We are together." The next few weeks were a desolate landscape of beeping machines, plastic incubators, and the terrifying antiseptic smell of the neonatal intensive care unit, NICU. Our beautiful, strong son, Leo, was not tucked safely into the Italian crib we had bought. He was suspended in a technological glass bubble, fighting for every breath. Marcus and I moved into a strange rhythm, alternating shifts at the NICU. We traded the stress of defending our home for the quiet terror of watching a tiny chest rise and fall. Leo was beautiful, but heartbreakingly small, barely 4 pounds. His skin was translucent, his tiny limbs skeletal. He was hooked up to monitors, wires, and IV lines that made him look less like a baby and more like a complicated, fragile scientific experiment. The first time Marcus was allowed to hold him, skin to skin, he wept. Not the panicked tears of the previous night, but deep, racking sobs of realization. "Look at him, Ava," he whispered, pressing his cheek against Leo's tiny, downy head. "He shouldn't be here. He should be safe inside you." This is what she did. We never spoke Bethany's name in that sterile room, but her presence was a heavy shroud over the incubator. Every tremor of the ventilator, every drop in Leo's oxygen saturation, was a physical echo of the toxic conflict she had orchestrated. The NICU became our true sanctuary, fortified by shared terror. The legal process, managed remotely by Marcus's attorney, ground forward while we focused on stabilizing Leo. Bethany, faced with the irrefutable evidence of the text messages, the audio recordings, and the eventual photographic proof of the nursery vandalism, which came days later, ensuring she violated the active restraining order, eventually cut a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to aggravated harassment and vandalism, compounded by the violation of the restraining order. She received 18 months in state prison. Chloe, the hapless accomplice, was never caught. She simply vanished, a minor detail in the wreckage. We sold the ranch house quickly, at a staggering loss. I signed the paperwork without a second thought. The dream house, the 1,970 seconds ranch with the azure pool, was no longer a symbol of our success. It was the site of a siege, the place where my sanity and our son's health had been irrevocably compromised. Marcus spent the week quietly moving assets, contacting a real estate agent specializing in quick sales, and lining up remote interviews with companies on the West Coast. The toxic family members, as expected, intensified their calls and emails after the sentencing. Marcus simply blocked every number, deleted every email, and changed his professional contacts to filter out any unrecognized family names. His guilt was a scorched earth. Nothing could grow there again. The day Leo was strong enough to be discharged, a triumphant, tearful day marked by the removal of the last IV line we didn't drive home. We drove to the airport. We left behind the ruined house, the toxic family ties, and the ghost of the hysterical woman Marcus almost convinced me I was. We took only what we needed: the necessities, the medical records, and the tiny, miraculous life we had fought so hard to save. We landed on the West Coast to a quiet, rainy evening, carrying our meager luggage and our greatest treasure. The temporary apartment was small, sterile, and anonymous. It had no indoor pool, no terracotta tiles, and absolutely no ghosts. Marcus carefully set up the travel crib in the corner of the small, clean bedroom. The quiet was absolute, broken only by the steady, shallow breaths of our son. A few months later, when Leo was chunky and robust, kicking happily in his crib in our new small bungalow, the final artifact arrived. A small brown package postmarked from the state penitentiary. Marcus opened it with the tip of a kitchen knife, wary of hidden threats. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was the hideous, slightly melted crocheted potholder, a pathetic, misshapen square of yarn, a spiteful monument to her inability to create anything beautiful, even in confinement. I took it from Marcus, turning the ugly thing over in my hands. It represented the price we paid. The loss of our savings, the destruction of our first home, the irreversible trauma of the NICU, and the severed ties to the only life Marcus had ever known. But that physical distance, that irrevocable break from the poison, had bought us something infinitely more valuable than any house. I kept the hideous potholder, not as a reminder of betrayal, but as a monument to the strength it took to survive the reckoning, and the infinite distance we had traveled to, finally, truly, be free. We need to come home right now. Someone has broken in. The locksmith's words echoed in the tiny cold space of the NICU consultation room. Marcus didn't argue or ask for details. He simply hung up the phone, his face a mask of absolute white-hot fury. "She did it," he said, the words flat. "She broke the restraining order within hours of it being served. She didn't just break in. She violated a court order. This is no longer harassment, Ava. This is criminal." We sped back to the house in a silence thicker than concrete. The rage emanating from Marcus was a physical force, focused entirely on the road ahead. We found the locksmith waiting for us outside, nervously pointing at the front door. The expensive new smart lock Marcus had installed the previous night was hanging loose, its metal casing ripped away from the doorframe. Splintered wood surrounded the gap. "She used a crowbar, Mr. Wallace," the locksmith stammered. "It was brute force. I called the police immediately when I saw the extent of the damage. We bypassed the police, they were already en route and rushed inside. The assault was systematic, malicious, and entirely symbolic. Nothing was stolen, proving the motive was pure destruction. Bethany hadn't cared about valuables. She cared about ruining the symbols of our happiness. The imported terracotta tiles in the living room were chipped and cracked in large, deliberate patterns, like scars carved into the floor. The new leather sofa we loved had been slashed repeatedly, the soft filling oozing out like a grotesque wound. Even the indoor pool, the centerpiece of our decadence, was tainted. She had poured something dark and oily into the azure water, rendering it opaque and foul-smelling. But her path of destruction ended, inevitably, in the nursery. The smell hit us first. A noxious combination of industrial-strength spray paint and something sickly sweet. We stood in the doorway of the room we had spent months preparing for Leo. It was no longer a sanctuary. It was a scene of targeted, personalized violence. The pristine white walls were defaced with thick black graffiti. Words scrawled in hasty, furious letters. Asterisk. Fat pregnant shrew, asterisk. Asterisk, you took him from me, asterisk. And centered over the Italian crib, the one phrase that ripped the breath right out of my lungs, connecting her actions to Leo's fragile state. Asterisk, asterisk, baby killer. Asterisk, asterisk, baby killer. Marcus grabbed the doorframe, his knuckles white, making a ragged, guttural sound of pure horror. "Oh God, Ava, look at what she did," he whispered, his voice trembling. I couldn't move. I stared at the epithet splashed across the wall, absorbing the sheer, unadulterated hatred. This wasn't just envy. It was sociopathic malice. She had known the stress of her months-long campaign, had caused the premature birth, and now she was weaponizing the trauma itself. My eyes drifted toward the crib. The beautiful, handcrafted Italian wood was deeply gouged. But the final act of desecration was worse. A large, plush rabbit, one of the first toys we bought Leo, lay decapitated inside the crib. Its stuffing was pulled out, and its head had been spray-painted black and crudely attached to the railing with a nail. Bethany hadn't just defaced our house, she had performed a symbolic murder of our son. I felt a sudden, cold calmness replace the shock. There were no tears left. This was the answer to every lingering question, every moment of self-doubt. This was the physical manifestation of the monster Marcus had protected with his guilt. She did this because she knew we were at the hospital, I stated, my voice flat and distant. She knew Leo was fighting for his life, and she came here to rub it in our faces, to punish us for our existence. Marcus stumbled into the room, his eyes fixed on the graffiti. He pulled the mutilated doll from the crib as if it were a burning object, dropping it instantly. She is insane, he choked out. She needs to be locked away, now. The police arrived then, 2 uniformed officers and a detective. They were visibly shocked by the scene, particularly the messages spray-painted on the nursery walls. They immediately shifted from treating the call as a simple break-in to viewing it as aggravated harassment and malicious property damage connected to the active restraining order. The detective, a woman with sharp, no-nonsense eyes, took photos of every angle. She focused on the baby killer graffiti with palpable distaste. Given the active restraining order, Mr. Wallace, and the context of the harassment you detailed earlier, we know who did this, she confirmed. We will be issuing a warrant for her arrest based on these clear violations. This goes beyond family drama. This is criminal intimidation. As the detective worked, cataloging the destruction, Marcus and I retreated to the hallway, away from the stench of the paint. I won't subject you to this again, Marcus vowed, pulling me close. He held me carefully, avoiding pressure on my recovering body. We are not sleeping here tonight. We are going straight back to the hospital. And we are selling this house tomorrow. We'll take a loss, Marcus. I warned him, stating the obvious. The property was a wreck. Quick sale meant significant loss. I don't care if we give it away, Ava, he insisted, his voice raw with conviction. Money means nothing. Safety is the only currency that matters. This house, this beautiful damned ranch, it is no longer a home. It is a war zone. We are done fighting on her territory. We returned to the NICU an hour later. The sterile, humming environment of the intensive care unit felt safer and cleaner than our own destroyed home. Sitting beside Leo's tiny glass incubator, the decision solidified. Marcus spoke to the real estate agent from his phone, issuing direct, clear instructions. Sell immediately. Disclose the damage. Accept the best offer within 72 hours. He then called his attorney, detailing the police report and ensuring the warrant for Bethany's arrest was expedited. The final hammer blow to our old life came 2 days later. Bethany was apprehended trying to flee the state. The police found the crowbar and the empty cans of spray paint in her car. She was booked and held for violating a court order, felony vandalism, and aggravated harassment. The text messages and my audio recording were presented as evidence of her long-term intent, guaranteeing she would not be granted bail. I received the news while holding Leo, who had finally passed the 5-pound mark, and was strong enough to wear his first knitted hat. The relief was not joyous, but profound. The release of tension that had coiled tight in my chest for months. The snake was caged, but even with Bethany behind bars, the threat lingered. Her flying monkeys, the extended family who had always relied on her narrative of victimhood, started calling Marcus. They called him cruel, heartless, and accused him of abandoning his sister in her time of need, completely ignoring the photographic evidence of the nursery. She's family, Marcus. How could you choose that girl over your own sister? His aunt pleaded on one message. Marcus, sitting beside me, simply deleted the messages. They are part of the poison too, he explained. They will never acknowledge the truth because her drama feeds them. We are cutting them out. Within a week, Marcus found a small, temporary corporate apartment near Seattle, 3,000 miles from the poisoned nest. The ranch house was sold at a substantial loss to a developer who planned to gut the entire structure. We didn't look back. The dream house had cost us too much already. The day Leo was strong enough to be discharged, a triumphant, tearful day, marked by the removal of the last IV line, we didn't drive home. We drove to the airport. We left behind the ruined house, the toxic family ties, and the ghost of the hysterical woman Marcus almost convinced me I was. We took only what we needed: the necessities, the medical records, and the tiny, miraculous life we had fought so hard to save. Leo slept soundly on the flight, cradled securely in my arms. I looked out the window at the vast expanse of the continent below, realizing the physical distance was the only true guarantee of our freedom. We landed on the west coast to a quiet, rainy evening, carrying our meager luggage and our greatest treasure. The temporary apartment was small, sterile, and anonymous. It had no indoor pool, no terracotta tiles, and absolutely no ghosts. Marcus carefully set up the travel crib in the corner of the small, clean bedroom. He didn't put up the mural or the expensive Italian mobile. He just placed a small, simple light near the crib. As I lay in bed that night, listening to the soft, rhythmic breathing of my son beside me, I finally felt the absolute, complete cessation of fear. We had paid the price, the trauma, the financial loss, the severing of family, but we had purchased something priceless in return. We had purchased a fresh start, built on the solid ground of validation and shared protection. We were safe. A few months later, the hideous, melted crocheted potholder arrived in the mail, Bethany's resentful gift from the state penitentiary. It was ugly, but I kept it. I kept it as a physical reminder, not of the price of betrayal, but of the strength it took to survive the reckoning, and the infinite distance we had traveled to, finally, truly, be free. We landed on the west coast to a quiet, rainy evening, carrying our meager luggage and our greatest treasure. The temporary apartment was small, sterile, and anonymous. It had no indoor pool, no terracotta tiles, and absolutely no ghosts. Marcus carefully set up the travel crib in the corner of the small, clean bedroom. He didn't bother with a mural or the expensive Italian mobile. He just placed a small, simple nightlight near the crib. The quiet was absolute, broken only by the steady, shallow breaths of our son. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I didn't have to strain to hear muffled conversations or worry about a clicking door. There was nothing to document, nothing to defend. We were 3,000 miles away, and the air was clean. The legal process, managed remotely by Marcus's attorney, ground forward while we focused on stabilizing Leo. Bethany, faced with the irrefutable evidence of the text messages, the audio recordings, and the photographic proof of the nursery vandalism, eventually cut a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to aggravated harassment and vandalism, compounded by the violation of the restraining order. She received 18 months in state prison. It wasn't as long as I wanted, but the physical separation was absolute, and the felony conviction guaranteed she would never be able to financially rely on Marcus again. Chloe, the hapless accomplice, was never caught. She simply vanished, a minor detail in the wreckage. The toxic family members, as expected, intensified their calls and emails after the sentencing. Marcus's phone would buzz with desperate pleas about Bethany's suffering and accusations of our cruelty. They insisted he should pay her legal fees and contribute to her commissary fund. Marcus simply blocked every number, deleted every email, and changed his professional contacts to filter out any unrecognized family names. His guilt was a scorched earth. Nothing could grow there again. In the small apartment, stripped of the old stressors, our marriage thrived. We had faced the worst betrayal and survived the most profound trauma imaginable. Watching our child fight for his life, that shared fire had burned away the layers of confusion and resentment, leaving behind only essential truths. Marcus never tired of apologizing, but his actions spoke louder. He was attentive, hyper-vigilant only in service of our safety, and absolutely devoted to Leo. He would sit for hours, just watching Leo sleep, ensuring every milestone rolling over. The first giggles, the 5-month checkup confirming his full recovery was celebrated as a victory stolen from the clutches of malice. We sold the ranch house quickly, at a staggering loss. I signed the paperwork without a second thought. The money was irrelevant. It was the cost of purchasing our freedom. We poured the remaining funds into a down payment on a small, brightly lit bungalow near the ocean, far from the shadows of the past. It was modern, efficient, and had no place for ghosts. It was in this new home, 3 months into our fresh start, that the final artifact arrived. A small brown package postmarked from the state penitentiary. Marcus opened it with the tip of a kitchen knife, wary of hidden threats. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was the hideous, slightly melted crocheted potholder I had imagined months ago. A pathetic, misshapen square of yarn, a spiteful monument to her inability to create anything beautiful, even in confinement. I took it from Marcus, turning the ugly thing over in my hands. It was a tangible measure of the distance we had traveled. It represented the price we paid. The loss of our savings, the destruction of our first home, the irreversible trauma of the NICU, and the severed ties to the only life Marcus had ever known. But when I looked at Leo, now chunky and robust, kicking happily in his crib, I knew the calculus had changed. That physical distance, that irrevocable break from the poison, had bought us something infinitely more valuable than any house. It had bought us sanity, loyalty, and the boundless, quiet confidence of a future that was finally, irrevocably, ours. I kept the hideous potholder, not as a reminder of betrayal, but as a monument to the strength it took to survive the reckoning, and the infinite distance we had traveled to finally, truly, be free.